Gfinity Arena in London. We are here for a super exciting show today. You know what it is. It is time for the Digital Schoolhouse Overwatch Esports Finals. It's going to be super exciting. I cannot wait. But before we kind of go into it, why don't we talk you through the schedule so you know what's going to be coming up today? Well, it's going to be great. Cool, so here we go. Again, at 10:40, roughly, because, you know, we're a little bit behind schedule, but don't judge us, guys. We've got you covered. We're going to have our keynote by David Janssen, so that's going to be super interesting, talking about all things esports and Yuki. It's going to be great. And then after that, we're going to go into match 1, our first semi, to see who's going to go through into our final, followed by match 2 again, to see who's going to go into our final after that. 12:10, well, we're going to grab lunch here, but obviously you at home, of course, can grab lunch as well if you want to. Followed by match 3, we're going to see who is going to come in our third place, because obviously, you know, we like to appreciate third place. You know, it's definitely important. Again, after that, we're going to take a quick break, but then do not go anywhere, because then we are going to have our grand final to see who is going to take this whole tournament home. It's going to be exciting stuff, guys. We're all super excited here. And then, to top it off, we're going to be going through our prizes, because obviously, you know, competition is great and it's nice to win, but I think we all like to get some prizes. Right, so obviously for those of you who aren't here, you know, we have a pretty electric studio, but we want you guys to get involved too. So please tweet at us at digital, well, I'm saying that wrong actually. It's at DigSchoolHouse and hashtag DHS Esports. So please get involved, tweet us your questions, because we want to ask the panel what you guys are interested in, what you want to know about esports, how you can get involved, anything you want to know, so please do that. Before we get on to our panel then, before we get into any more things, we want to show you a quick video about all the things that Digital Schoolhouse is up to. So check it out.
Digital Schoolhouse is a unique way for children to learn about computing through engaging workshops. From the point of view of the pupil, they're going on a school trip. When they're there, they learn computing with a unique blend of resources.
We're doing the jigsaws to learn about algorithms.
And that's one of the key things I want you to learn today, that if you've got a sequence of instructions to do something, that's an algorithm.
And we also learn as teachers much more than we did before, so it helps the kids and the teachers.
There's things here that we're able to take back to school and disseminate back to staff.
Primary teachers, I think, understandably appreciated the chance to come in and watch the programming being taught.
I've already seen a few Digital Schoolhouse lessons, algorithm through dance, which is very unique. You're not going to see that in a very traditional computer science lesson.
It's not really like any other kind of lesson.
When they get something right, there's just this spark in their eyes, just light up and they go, I get this.
This is creative learning that's really, really fun.
We've expanded from 8 to 19 projects this September, and that's thanks to PlayStation.
We're keen to fund it and encourage other companies to get behind it and really grow it.
We're trying to teach the children skills for jobs that don't exist yet. What we do know is that those jobs will involve computational thinking skills, and that's why we've bought into the Digital Schoolhouse model.
We're introducing the GCSE in computing this September and have had immediately to put 2 classes on because the take-up was huge.
If I look at our options process and the number of children who are now interested in taking computer science, there's been a significant increase, and the enthusiasm is something that's tangibly different since our involvement.
It's a win-win for everybody involved. If we can harness the power of play-based learning in the classroom, then we can really unlock the potential behind each child.
That was great. So now we can see exactly why we are here. It's all to bring gaming and IT to kids across the UK, and that is the amazing work that Digital Schoolhouse is doing with Yuki. So I think we can all appreciate that. As people who love gaming, it's definitely a really great cause. Now, I would like to introduce someone who has a lot to do with the video that we just saw, and of course, everything that we're doing here today, and Digital Schoolhouse's work across the UK. So David Janssen, please come up here for your amazing talk that we're going to hear. No pressure.
No pressure about it. I think I'm here to potentially try and add a little bit of hopefully educational side to it, but I just want to give you a little bit of background. Obviously my accent's not quite the same as everyone here. I'm from Australia originally, but I moved here a number of years ago with Nintendo as their managing director. And I've been in the video games business for over 25 years. And actually, I keep saying that, and it's probably 5 years ago I was saying that, so probably getting close to 30. But prior to, when I left Nintendo, I joined Gfinity as a director here, and we got this amazing arena and competition we have in the Elite Series. What I wanted to do is just give you a few thoughts. I actually almost put down ramblings, because it's going to be a little bit of a mix and match between video games, a bit of esports, and about maybe some thoughts for you guys to have about if you want to get into the industry of either video games or esports, things maybe to look at. And I thought also maybe to make it a little bit more justify it to the teachers here, I thought I might do a little bit of history. So, you know, you thought you're coming to an esports thing and a bit of video games. No, I'm going to give you a bit of history talk. So if I can have I think I've got some slides. Now, I just have to apologise for the slides because being a sort of corporate type of person, doing PowerPoint presentations to businesses and things, you do it a certain way, but when you come to somewhere like this, the technology sort of threw me a little bit as far as the build. So some of them I might just whiz through if they don't come up properly. So if you said to your parents, I want to have a career in esports or video games, they'd probably start questioning your sanity. And what are we doing, sending you to school? What's the problem? What about an education, etc.? But I want to try and sort of paint the picture to you that actually it's not necessarily a bad idea. If you look about probably 25, 30 years ago, and I might be a little bit, let's say, corporate in some of the things I mentioned, so if you start snoozing, I'll probably understand. But if you look at the New York Stock Exchange about 25, 30 years ago, now there's something like 50 or 60% of the companies that were listed then no longer exist. They've either been bought by other companies, they've either changed, etc. And then the top 10 companies in the world, 6 of them are technology companies. Now, obviously, you guys would know, companies like Google and Facebook and all that sort of things, Apple. So if you look at it, everything's changing. So the opportunities, I think, in technology and video games are there. One of the biggest technology companies, which you may not have heard of, is a company called Tencent, which is a Chinese company who own a number of companies you would know, like Riot. They own a big chunk of Activision and right into the games area. 47% of their income comes from video games. So there's video games as an industry, and esports is a big and growing sector. So if I move, I haven't got a clicker, so I have to move on to the next slide. And as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit of history, because what I was talking about there before, when I talk about Wall Street and the changes in the company, is what we call evolution. And there's a famous Englishman, Charles Darwin, who talked about evolution, about how things change over time and evolve. And if we look at it, entertainment, that's what we're in, has changed over time. Video games haven't been around that long. There's sort of a bit of debate about they've been around since, I think there's some, you couldn't actually want to say play it, but there's some demonstration stuff in about 1947. Just using what they called an I know, some sort of technical thing, radar type of equipment that they invented then. They started playing games with it. Really, probably the first video games that were commercial, that were out in the market, were in the early 70s. If I move on to the next slide, and this one's probably not going to build, but as I say, if you don't evolve and don't change, you end up like the dinosaurs, extinct. And that's what's happening. If you see entertainment industries, the movie industries, TV, etc., are all heading into the area and the space, or I say heading, that we're in, as in video games and esports. And that's because of the technology and the changes. And it's because of you guys too, as in the way you consume your media. Can I move on to the next one? Now this one was not going to build so well. And basically the story, because there was 3 slides, there was a picture of a train, and then there was a picture of a flying boat, and I had to drag in a bit of my Aussie heritage and put Qantas up there. But basically what I was trying to point here is what business was the railway in? The railway was in transport. But did they move on to planes and that? No, they didn't. And so you see the railways now are doing it pretty tough. And that's the same, say, in the entertainment area, about evolving and moving into new areas. And that's where, say, esports and video games is a new area in that entertainment space. Can we move on? Anyone know what this is? Any idea? This is, and I'm sort of drawing back on a little bit of my background, because I was with Nintendo for about 17 years. And everyone thinks of Nintendo, a video game company, and wouldn't realise that it's been around since about 1847, making cards, traditional Japanese playing cards. And it's been it was a family business and then listed. They still own a big chunk of it. But in Kyoto, which is the head office, there's a card museum where they celebrate the heritage of these cards. Now, the Japanese cards that they used to make were very, very traditional. And Kyoto was the head of where the shogun lived. The emperor lived in Tokyo, and the shogun lived in Kyoto, which was like, he was the military leader. And it was a very, very traditional town. Normal people were not allowed to play card games because that was considered gambling, only the elite. And so Nintendo used to make cards for these, and they cost something like $5,000–6,000 in current terms, US dollars a pack. They were sort of like gold leafed around the edge. So they've been around for a long time, but obviously they progressed and moved into video games. Can I move to the next slide? You guys, I'd say, obviously, I started sort of in the 8-bit era. In fact, my first video game I had was called a Game & Watch, was a little handheld. And then I had an 8-bit machine that was, all it did was Pong, and actually had another game, Tanks, on it. And I was probably about, I think, 6 or 7 then. But if we see over time, video games progressed from 8-bit, 16-bit. We don't now, if we go, current, I've got another one in a minute, but if you see, they don't really count the bits anymore as far as power goes, because there's so much other technology that's involved as far as the graphics side of it and things like that. But if you see the evolution, I'm talking consoles here, obviously PCs are just, much more powerful and do a lot of other things. But if you see the evolution and the changes, it's bringing a lot of things together in the entertainment field. Can we move to the next one? So if we look now at the current generation in the console side, they're so far removed from what if we went back to the 8-bit generation. So far removed now, and even more powerful than, say, if you go back 10 years, some of the computers are about. Just an interesting one, when I was at Nintendo, I don't know whether you guys remember the first movie with, but Arnold Schwarzenegger with Terminator, and the melting guy that used to sort of melt in that sort of chrome look and he'd then come back again. The graphics machine they used for that was called a Silicon Graphics processor, and it was like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cost to do. And that was the latest technology. They then condensed that chip, or the technology there, to go into the N64. So this is the progression that's happened over time that's giving you guys the opportunities to play games that we could even dream about, as far as graphics capabilities, etc. So move on, next slide. And this is what I'm moving a little bit now from that sort of area, and want to move a little bit into esports and what technology's done. Because people talk about how esports is about, suddenly it's always in the papers a lot now, and people are talking about it. There's lots of people from outside the games industry investing in sports teams all around the world because they see it as a really hot property, and that's because of the changes in technology. And when I'm talking about technology, the biggest thing that's really made the big difference, and this is what I think a lot of people say, is with the streaming of it being the fact that you can watch it at home, is when Twitch came in and started opening it up for everyone. That's really created, to some extent, the whole phenomenon of esports now, which makes it, to me, a very much a legitimate business. And there's other companies as well. Move on to the next slide. Skip that one. Thank you. Yeah. This is what originally, when we started talking about esports, was LAN events. That's going back a while. It's even black and white photo. I mean, now you've got LAN events, like Insomnia up in Birmingham with huge numbers of people there, and it's just grown and developed. But because of streaming, it now can be much more global to some extent. And move on. So why esports? I mean, you guys, as I say, looking at sort of probably been playing esports for quite a while, or hopefully you have. And it hasn't necessarily been around that long. It has been around in a LAN sense, but the way it's gone now and grown is because of these changes in technology, because you guys have grown up with video games. My kids, I sort of started when I was young playing video games because I was pretty lucky, but there's a lot of my generation still don't even know what video games are all about. And then I've had kids who had video games when they started, and they're just grown up with it. And it's a legitimate form of entertainment now that's accepted by everyone. Well, I say everyone, hopefully this audience anyway. But a lot more people accept video games as being, hey, nothing wrong with playing video games. Because I think the perceptions have changed really about what it's all about. And it's also because, I say, people can get more access to it. So next slide. Probably a little bit, and because he's been showing me, probably talking to the converted, talking to the people that know a little bit more about what that is. But when I'm talking to other people, you have to almost explain all the facets of esports. And what I wanted to point out here, because if you're thinking of careers in the future, it's not necessarily just all about being up there and playing in the competitions, but there's lots of other areas to get involved. And we see all the crew here, all the cameramen. There's people up in the booth doing all the production. And even before we get to this point, there's a lot of people do lots of work to make these things happen. So there's lots of different areas where you can actually get into the industry. Because if we move on to the next one, publishers. I mean, as I say, huge companies that are amongst the most profitable in the world. So if you want to get into some of these companies, yeah, there's plenty of things. As I said before, a lot of these companies now are owned by Tencent, so they're a huge Chinese company, but all household names now. Most people know about them. So move on. Right. If you think of any sport, and everyone here in the UK is football mad, and we've got Chelsea right next door, how many people who play football end up getting the opportunity to play for Chelsea? Not a lot, really. I mean, so many young people have their dreams of, playing for their favourite club. I don't know whether it sometimes can earn lots of money, but, their aspiration of being a professional sports person, I think a lot of people have that. But if you start at the bottom of the pyramid in any sport, there's lots of people there and aspiring, but not many people get to the top. And I think that's the same as any area, and the same probably with esports as well. In fact, it's probably even more difficult because it's not such a, as I say, huge ecosystem as compared to other sporting areas. It's not to say it can't be done, but if you want to get there, there's a lot of work that has to be put in before. It's not just sitting at home playing games. And I think someone later today will probably talk about, from the pro side, talk about what it really takes to get there. And most of the guys generally, not using a generalisation, but are really well educated. They've gone through their education because you have to be smart. You're doing a lot of sort of tactical sort of things when you're playing, but also they also realise it may not pay the bills later. You may not be able to have a career, but you can fall back onto other areas. And that's what I'm saying. There's lots of other points you can get involved in. Can we move on? The future. I was just going to chuck a couple of things in to give you a bit of a thought. And unfortunately, the next slide, I think, isn't going to build so well. But if I can go to it, yeah, it's a bit mixed up. I was just talking about types of video games. And if we go back historically, what they used to call a linear video game. So you'd all be aware of Super Mario, where you just run across the screen, progressing as you go. That's what they consider a linear game. And then you've got your non-linear games, things like Fallout. And then we go, when I say sandbox, which gives you a bit more, you can go in different directions. So it's not, you don't have to progress on a sort of straight line to get to the next level. And then what you're probably more familiar with nowadays, what they call a sandbox game, where they're basically unlimited boundaries, where, say, Grand Theft Auto 3, where you can just travel the universe and check all that things. My next point, which is all covered up a bit, is areas that I see of real interest in the video games area. Everyone talks about virtual reality, augmented reality. I sort of tend to think augmented reality might be a little bit more the area, but a lot of people in the VR world probably want to shoot me when I sort of start saying that's the area to go because they've invested so much money. But it hasn't got there yet. There's lots of really interesting things, but I don't think it's a necessarily mass thing. But I think the really interesting things are AI. Already in video games, there's a certain amount of artificial intelligence. So when you're playing against a computer, and you're playing against a character, they've programmed a lot of things in there where the opposition character knows when to attack you, its health's getting low, knows when to retreat. It's a very simple sort of amount of programming. But with the way AI is going now, it'll get to the point where you won't even know that it's the computer playing, you'll be thinking it's a person, right? And it means the computer will start learning how you play. It'll start learning your characteristics. And it'll actually might make it tougher, or they could program it that they can make it less competitive to give you more of a chance. But then what it means then next, and I've got the word there, it's a bit sort of procedurality, is another area of video games that's looking to change. When I talked about the sandbox, we could go different areas. What's happening now is the actual game story and the game progress is being generated in real time. So instead of it all being pre-programmed, as you play and you go in a direction, things will be generated, the scenery, the characters will be generated. If you go there again, it could be all different. So it's not tied to a script. So there's all these areas that are happening that every time you play a game, it could be different. Move on. And what jobs are in the games industry? I mean, I could put a list of things down there, and it's not just all about programming, etc. But, you know, as I said before, production, art is a really big thing that they look for, you know, creative area, music and sound technology, all those sorts of things. So the areas that you may be interested in at school that actually can lead into this area. And as I said, skills you need. What do we get a lot of the time? And this is one of the reasons why Digital Schoolhouse is about. What happens a lot of the time in the games industry, they say when kids come to them, they've either gone to university, done some sort of computer program, and it used to be in the old days, and sort of showing my age a bit, when you did computer science at school, they taught you how to use PowerPoint and Excel and Word, those sorts of things. That's not what the industry wants. So what the Digital Schoolhouse is doing is trying to get you skills that will actually be of use if you wanted to move into, not just the games industry, but I just think in all the tech companies are looking for this sort of stuff. And so what should we be doing now? Probably, you know, heads down. I was going to say another word, but going out. So you were told not to say things, but I was going to say something else. But heads down and whatever's up, and keep studying. Look at all the subjects you're doing, because even things like history, all those sorts of subjects would be used. Interesting point for you in talking about what you do. Riot Games, they hire sociologists, not programs, they hire sociologists, psychologists. Why? Because they want to understand how the communities are playing the games, how they react to each other, and how do they actually increase or the playing value for you guys. So they want to understand how people think in clans and in groups. They want to understand all those things. So they hire people to understand that. So really, as I say, well, I just wanted to tip a bucket of a lot of things up there for you just to maybe think about. Give these guys a chance to get everything ready for the first matches. And I'll be about most of the day. If you want to come and have a chat and ask any questions or whatever. So I've been in the industry for a long time, know a lot of people, and can point you in a direction if you're interested. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, David. I think we can all agree that was super interesting for all of you at home and for all of you who are watching in our audience. Obviously, a lot of you are still in school, and I think it's super beneficial to learn about all the things available to you in this industry. And if you want to get involved, what you need to do and the skills that you need to get there. Right. Before we go on to anything else, we're going to run you through the schedule one more time, just to give you a quick recap of everything that's going to be going on today and everything that you can be expecting. So, up next, obviously, we're going to be having our first game. I think our schedule will be coming up now, so you can see it in even more detail. So yes, obviously, we just had our keynote. Great stuff, really interesting. Again, thank you, David. So again, match one's coming up. So it's going to be our first semi, and we're going to see who's going to our final, followed by match two. Again, we're going to be seeing who's going to be making it into that coveted spot that I know we're all crazy hyped to see. We're then going to take a quick break for lunch, and then after that, we're going to come back with match three, which will be our third place winners. Because obviously we want to figure out who's going to come in third place too. After that, we're going to go for a quick break. Then, right after that, it'll be time for our grand final, the moment that we've all been waiting for to see which school really is the best in the UK when it comes to Overwatch. Then, at the very end, we will be giving prizes to our winners. It's going to be really exciting. So, guys, do not go anywhere. We're going to go for a quick break, but after that, we're going to end with our first game.